Ayin Beis, chapter Ayin, 70, the bottom of page 130. However, as is the custom, summary time. Okay. So, we are in the middle of Maimer 18, Discourse 18. Zehayem Tchilas Masecha, beginning of a new year. That year was Tafreish Ayin Gimel. So after the first chapter, 68 of this Maimer, that is, a full summary of the chapter, the chapters 1 through 67. The Rabbi Rashab continues in chapter 69, in discussing the detailed kasarim, the specific kesers, or you could say desires, rotzen. In a way, it's like the evolution of the desire of creation. So we begin with before the tzimtzum, or even before the desire, he calls Ein Sof. Yesterday I explained that to visualize somewhat, because as we spoken, you cannot enter pre-tzimtzum consciousness. So all you can really do is read what we're told, described, and then you can extrapolate from what's going on this side of the curtain and extrapolate what's going on that side of the curtain, being that everything originates from there. Like we say, Mimcha HaKol, everything's from God. So if you look at me and you, the psari, our flesh, and we said we created the image of God, so it gives us a glimpse of what's going on. So basically, the structure, as he puts it, or structure, I call it structure. Atzmus, we don't talk about, because Atzmus is beyond any description, any way of understanding it. We can experience Atzmus primarily as an experience. I would not say in a comprehension, like he said earlier, less machshava tvisa beiklal, that's even lower levels. But iyu tov is beru'usa deliba. So the desire of the heart.
He says iyu, that means Atzmus, or he means
less machshava tvisa beiklal is even on lower levels. But Atzmus was sure. But the point I'm trying to make is, it's almost like, I'm just saying it for the record before we move on. It's, you get Atzmus when you go through everything that Atzmus wants you to do, basically, and then that emerges. There's no way to get there directly, simply because it's not accessible to any entity, because it's a completely different entity than we are. It's the source of it all. You get straight to the source. Now, I don't want to go into Atzmus, I just want to just know that it's there. It's always behind everything. It's always a master planner. But how Atzmus placed a system that we could understand and talk about is what concerns us. And that is Ein Sof, is, let's put it, is the platform. That's the platform for everything. I use platform in a very loose way. So I described it yesterday, because one of the chidushim of the Alter Rebbe was that there's something that's Ein Sof, that's not Atzmus. It's clear, because it says in Zohar, Ein Sof, L'mayla den Kates, Ein Sof. So the Rameh questions and asks, as the different Kabbalists that he wrote earlier, what is this thing? What level is this? And obviously everything we're using is examples, just examples. So the Rameh Mepano, who is an Italian Kubal and a student of the Ramak and so on, he concludes that it's Keser, Rotzen. The Alter Rebbe, in many Maimorim, negates that. Because Ratzon too is some type of identifiable entity. True, it's not a faculty, as he said in chapter 69, also earlier. You can't compare Ratzon, let's say, to Seichel or Midas. Seichel, Midas have a place where they reside. The brain affects the way you think. Your arm is weaker, it affects how you write. There's a relationship between Eris and Kalim, as we spoke at length. That's all the chapters in the beginning. So Ratzon is not defined by that. Ratzon is everywhere. Ratzon is an equalizer. Ratzon dominates. Ratzon is only an agent of the soul's interests, an expression of the soul, clear. But it's still an agent. You can't say Ratzon equals soul. You could say Ratzon doesn't have anything but the soul. It's the expression of the soul, but you can't say that is that. And so the same thing, you cannot say that something is Ein Sof. That's an entity like that. So his answer is, the Alter Rebbe says, and there's many other reasons, we're not getting into all the theological reasons, that there's a thing called Er. Er is the Ein Sof. What's the distinction between Eir and Ratzon? So I explained that think of it like an invisible quilt. I'm using it on the lower level, not Lifnei Tzimtzum, but the same idea. Imagine all of existence that you and I see. We only see particles. You don't see the invisible quilt or field of energy where everything rests. So I don't see that when I move my hand or when I behave kindly, everybody here in this room is impacted, or everybody in this earth is impacted, because we don't see that ripple effect. We don't see the invisible water or invisible field that connects us all. So we see the pieces. Eir Ein Sof on a higher level is exactly that. It's the invisible blanket or field.
Electromagnetic field.
Fine, you could say because
basic underlying electromagnetic.
Okay, if you're comfortable with that word electromagnetic field, because not everybody knows what an electromagnetic field is. That's why I used everyone knows what everyone knows what a blanket is. You know, but a blanket, think an invisible blanket. If I shake it here, the whole blanket shakes. So the fact that you don't see it doesn't mean anything. It's actually, I borrowed the term actually from string theory, where if you look at when they look at their modules in imagery, you see the world, but they put this invisible wave that has like a grid, and just add that becomes the thing that connects everything, and that's why subatomic particles don't need time and space, and there's no faster than the speed of light. There's a second, billions of, because they don't have to travel. You see, light, you say from here to here, you have to travel. But what happens if there's no here and here? There's a quilt that just connects everything. On that level, something happens here in a second, billion miles away, because it's the same blanket. But then there's another side of existence, which is where there is distinction of time and space, and we're not negating that.
It's all together.
Yeah, and the way we talk about mamala seviv, you could say mamala kolamin, or we call keiches pnimim. Each thing has its place. Chesed is chir, gvura, gvura. But if you talk about underneath chesed and gvura, or surrounding chesed and gvura, there's a whole other dimension that is not chesed, not gvura. It connects everything. Now that's what we call desire. Okay, I know it's like a strange word. Why would you say desire? You call it a quilt, call it energy. No, but remember, Ratzon is not Eir Ein Sof. So Ratzon is one step after Eir Ein Sof. That's the basic point here. So Eir Ein Sof.
Ratzon is this quilt.
No. Eir Ein Sof is this quilt.
Oh, so then what did you say about Ratzon?
Because I skipped a line. Let me add the line. I went too fast. On this quilt, Ola B'Ritzeinei. In this quilt, because remember, this quilt is what is basically Atzmus's way of putting a lakus in a conscious state. Whatever the word conscious means. Remember, conscious doesn't mean we're conscious of it. It means it's no longer this built-in mitzias nimsa mysterious thing that we just simply can't relate to, etc., etc. So it's the beginning of existence as we know it, though it's far from existence yet. It's all, he could call it's all within the Atzmus reality. I'm talking before the Tzimtzum now. Eir Ein Sof. Everything is after Atzmus. I began that preface. Atzmus, take Atzmus out of the picture.
When you say Atzmus reality, you mean that, not necessarily. Okay.
Yeah.
Never think about that.
So no, but okay. Now within this, so this is the expression. So that's Eir. In that there are many levels. I'm not going through all the levels. The level that's relevant to us is the level before this quilt desires to have details. Okay? That's the thing.
Then let me ask you a question.
There's no Ratzon before. No, when you say, does it mean that Atzmus had a Ratzon for Eir Ein Sof? Absolutely not. The Alter Rebbe negated that in every possible way.
What did you just say?
That God had a Ratzon for Eir Ein Sof is absolutely not correct to say.
Right.
Yeah.
You mean he doesn't need the Eir Ein Sof came before any Ratzon?
Correct. Exactly correct. Because the Ratzon has a problem. The Ratzon is a Geder Proti. That's the words.
What do you call it?
Eir Ein Sof. It's exactly what you call it.
On the other hand, it's not Yechelus.
But I'm not getting Yechelis yet. I'm just giving you a review of the chapter. Get the Yechelis soon. I'm not talking Yechelis now.
And what about
One second, one at a time. What?
There's a point where there's not Eir Ein Sof.
There's no such point for all practical purposes because there's no time there.
It has to be emanation at some point. So what do you call that?
There's no time. So what's the point? What you're asking me? There's it's not Atzmus. That's all. Eir is not Atzmus. That's all you can say. Eir, Atzmus. Atzmus transmits through but is not Atzmus. However you define that. You need an answer in time. You only need an answer in time when you live in time. If you don't live in time, you don't need an answer in time.
Before time.
Don't think that there's no before after. There's not even infinite time. There's nothing.
Is that parallel to
I'm
Ak?
asking a time question.
Oh, Ak is much later.
I'm asking
Ak is much later, of course. Hold on. What are you asking?
Conceptual and then level question.
I just told you, is not Atzmus. Comes from Atzmus.
Right, so there's a point where there wasn't.
There's no. You never use such expression. There's no. With the point there wasn't. That word is not an accurate expression. Expression, if you want, Chassidus is ki'ilu kod ma'heder, which is not discussed here, but that's ki'ilu kod ma'heder simply means that it has a source. Like he says, you can't say ein leitchila. You could say ein sof. It has a source. That's all. Don't define tchila as time. A source.
I just wanted to know what you call the action that.
There's no action. There's no action. There's nothing. It's atzmus. Is essential.
If you don't describe it, there must be the Abishter, didn't exist with always or.
There's no always. There's the is as long as.
I'm just doing my best to find words to.
So I just told you, all you got to say is there's a source. That's all you have to say. That's the only thing you'll be able to say. All you got to say is there's a source. That's all you need to know. There's no such thing as they're always both there because you have to be on time.
Let's say
We don't say it's not Ein Tefillah. That was a quote that was brought out.
Yeah, no, but it carries also interestingly because it's completely bottled to the Atzmus. It carries also the Ein Tefillah of Atzmus. So it carries that energy as well.
There must have been some way to describe his willingness to have order.
No, absolutely. The word that is exactly the point. There's no willingness. There's no will. There's nothing. You see, you're talking on your terms.
I'm stuck in my terms.
Okay, so let's move on and think about it.
I do have one term we haven't discussed. The classic discussion in other Maimorim of Ratzon Muchlat. Where is that? When we read
He did use it here.
Is the Ratzon Muchlat?
He used it here. Look, go back to chapter.
Is that Ratzon Muchlat? But I think
Look at the bottom of page 121. Well, I'm talking to you.
Okay.
Look at page 121. The bottom of the beginning of 65. He specifically says it. He says it's not. Why don't you look? So Rebbe Rashab talks about it specifically. Look there.
Bottom 121.
That's also after Ur. Everything is after Ur. It's a higher level in Ratzon.
I'm asking about that. Where is that Ratzon Muchlat?
I told you after Ur, there are many levels. We're talking now specifically two. There are more than two levels. Ratzon Muchlat, we'd say the Ratzon Muchlat is in Ur Ein Sof. Everything Ur Ein Sof. And so Ratzon Muchlat is not even a Hiser. It's not even. It's the Ratzon Muchlat, he says, can exist and never come out your entire life. So it's not even you've come to a point where you said it's a good idea and I'm going to do it. And then do it later. This is just in general, and that's an innate desire. That's innate. Ratzon Muchlat is like an innate desire for something. You don't even, and it's not even necessarily been processed.
But they would speak about Aliyas or Ratzon at that point, right before the Ratzon Muchlat.
So that's all in Ur. Everything happens in Ur, not in Atzmus. There are many reasons that I touched upon some of them, and if you want, I've written about it as well in Samach Vov. Because this is very much like goes together with Samach Vov, the Maimarim of Vayelech. There's the whole argument of whether Ein Sof is Keser or not. And then there's a whole argument what exactly, in Kabbalah Mekubalim, different opinions on what you say Ein Sof and so on. So the Rameh says Ein Sof is Keser. The Ramak says you can't say it's Keser because Keser is already a level. You understand? What's bothering them? And then there's also a different disagreement there of what you define as what you call Ein Sof. Is it on the Etzem or not on the Etzem and so on. So there the answer is that the Arizal reconciled by saying Keser has two parts. There's a part of Keser that's Ein Sof, there's a part of Keser that's not. But as he continues there in explaining this, that still doesn't resolve the dilemma. The real dilemma is ultimately one of Shinui and the other of relationship. So if you say that Atzmus is involved directly and nothing below, you got the problem is, so is there a change within this Atzmus? before or after this type of questions. If you say it's not Atzmus, meaning it's Kesser, then in a sense you have a relationship with something that's not literally Atzmus. So the Oyer is the ultimate resolution of this, and the depth of understanding Oyer, which is, he says, B'zeh Chidush Rabbeinu Shmesed. This is the Chidush of the Alter Rebbe. He says this clearly. Tzemach Tzedek writes it, the Rebbe Rashab elaborates that there's a level called Oyer. See, Oyer resolves the dilemma because Oyer is essentially a paradox. It has no substance, and it does have. Ratzon has substance. You can't say Ratzon has no substance. It's a defined entity. It's a desire. The word desire means something. So to say that God has Chachma, yes, and say he has Ratzon, in a sense, is a very similar thing. You're attributing a specific identity. Oyer is nothing. Oyer doesn't. What does God have? Oyer doesn't have any identity. All it is a reflection of its source. All it is bittul, basically. And because it's bittul, it cannot be bottle. So you're dealing. So there's many explanations. Again, I don't want to go into detail here, but how Ur resolves this issue. That's why I keep talking about Ur being a field of energy. It's just a divine field of energy. That's all it is. If you stop right there, nothing happens. So everything works through this Ur, and because Ur has no impact on its source, and Ur itself, like let's say that's the examples he gave, the light of the sun. Light of the sun. The only difference is the light of the sun doesn't create particles, and this slide does, because God, Atzmus, is not a sun. Atzmus has a lot of power. So Atzmus, everything originates from Atzmus, but Ur is the place where it all plays itself out. There's nothing yet. There's no levels yet. They're talking here Ur Ein Sof, Poshet Betachlos Apshitis. You're not even talking about hidden spheres. Then comes another stage. In Ur Ein Sof, which is, let's put it this way. As I said, if you call Atzmus Bilti Metzias Nimtza, which means an existence that we cannot call existence, you can call Ur Metzias Nimtza. That's the only thing you can say. It's a Metzias Nimtza. There's no. Now, within this Ur begun. This is what he said in this past chapter. He said, now comes a level. So let's call this Etzema Ur. For all practical purposes, this is Etzema Ur. I'm not going now other details. I'm not giving you a comprehensive map. Stop bringing other Maimorim now into this. I have no problem. He said we can do it, but right now we're trying to just understand this state. The next step after Etzema Ur comes is Pashtus Ur. Remember, all this is all conceptual and all theoretical because there's no. It's not Etzema Ur like one state and then Pashtus Ur because there's no Tzimtzum yet. There's no space. We're not talking about space. We're talking all. As I said, the only way to understand this is with examples on the other side of the curtain after the Tzimtzum, so you can figure out and say, okay, that means within the Godhead is also the same ideas.
And this is even before Nisava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
No. That's before everything.
What? That's before this?
Yeah.
That's
Atzmus. That's
Nisava is desire.
That's all we have.
no. Nasav is not desire. No. Rotzen is.
Nisava is.
I just told you, Nasav is the word Taiva, not Rotzen. There's a different word. It's a completely different word. No. It's not. It's not. The whole point of Taiva is just a word that's used. Rotzen is not Taiva. Nasav Kodesh Baruch Hu is basically. Let me qualify. Maybe I should say this. If you talk about Nesava in a way that we can comprehend in the tools, then it's definitely in the air. That's for sure. So basically, if you're talking about why the whole thing came into being, why is there air in the first place, so to speak, or why is there a existence in the first place? That we say is because God wants, like He said, this words here. Let's use the words here. He says, the words here. He wants here. She inyan nivdil matzmusei. Yeah, we're up here. Samachtas. He wants something nivdil matzmusei. Let me just say this again. Ur is not an entity. Ur is Atzmus as a manifest. That's all it is.
Expression.
Even that I wouldn't use because that's Ratzon is an expression already. But fine, it's some form of it's Atzmus. Ur is not an entity Because if it's an entity, it doesn't solve any problems. Then it's just another name. You have Ratzon, so what? That's why I use the word quilt. I use the quilt because the quilt is a good example because there's nothing on it. It's just a quilt. It's just if you want to say when you speak divine unity, that's Ein Sof. Atzmus, you don't have to talk. There's no unity. There's no not unity. There's nothing talked about there. So Ein Sof.
The reflection of that was something discussed.
Okay. Yeah, it's examples. We use examples of the sun, of the soul. The examples he gave earlier about the heat, warming an object, metal, etc. It's all examples, and he qualifies the examples because the sun is this. So these are examples we use to try to relate to something of that. Then comes what he says, Ola B'Ritzeinei. So there's the Taram Shenetzel, before he rose in his will, and then he rose in his will. That's Bereishu Menusa de Malka. I'm just summarizing chapter 69, which is a very profound chapter. This is the word. If you go back to the chapter that just ran, big focus here is that there's something that's higher than Ratzon. Ratzon emerges in that state. That's the bottom line. If you want to know what Nesava, the real deep meaning of Nesava is not Ratzon. Nesava is just a word that we use to describe that Atzmus desired those of worlds.
Whatever you call it, it's an action.
No, not correct. It's not necessarily an action because within it produces an action. But Nesava is considered to be just a term that we humans use to describe Atzmus's wish.
Whatever, it's a change.
I'm sorry. What do you connect was it before Nesava or after Nesava? At that point, you can connect most of the world. At that point, or that further down. I mean, he just wanted something separate. I'll deal from himself. It was moved up from himself. It doesn't necessarily suggest at that point he was focusing on exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, the soul of it.
It doesn't say he wanted the lowest of this world, or
how do you get away from subtle
other
change?
than
I don't know how you
some
get away
otherness
from
he
before.
wanted, but not.
I mean, it's a little off the topic. If you want me to explain it, the question is a fair question. I'm not saying it's not a question. Maybe that's what you're referring to as well, the same type of question. A few things. Let's just talk about the moment when we say Yisrael Reisa v'Kudsha Brichu Kul Echad. Where's that? Where's Torah in this picture? Okay. So usually the explanation of this would be that whether we understand it or not, that there's no stage where Torah does not exist. Because Torah is God's wisdom and desire. There could be a stage where the Torah does not have a separate entity, so to speak, and is not manifest in any definition. But in some way, you look at Atzmus, there's a Torah in there somewhere. But at that point, there's no need because there's no so-called. And that state, if you look in that aspect of Atzmus, Torah doesn't have any definition. So you can say, for example, one second. Let me say something. So if you talk about, let's say, Har Sinai itself, or trees, or anything in this world, you could say it all originates in Atzmus, but you cannot say that it's an expression of Atzmus. When you say Torah, and the same thing I would say in Nesava, you say it's an expression of Atzmus. So bottom line is, for some reason which we'll never understand why, because there's no logic there. Remember, Taiva, there's no kasha. That's the expression that's used. This world that we have, and like he speaks later in this chapter, the pleasure. Okay, let's not even use the word pleasure. The transformation of this world that we achieve has an atzmizdik dimension to it. If you talk about the details, let's say water, fire, trees, birds, that's already not incidental. That's a means to another end. But dira b'tachtenim, like Torah and mitzvahs, is the end itself. So they relate essentially to the source itself. So yeah, you have to find the right human words. How do we speak that it relates to, without creating shinoi, as you said? So I would say like this. I'm trying to just find my words myself. The best way I could put it is like this. Remember again, we can't think in terms of our terms. It's not like, I desire something. There was a moment I didn't desire. Now I desire. And now I'm obsessed. It's completely not like that. The only way we can give an example is let's talk about our most innate connections. Let's say our connection with our children. I'm just using an example, the best I can find that's as atzmizdik as it gets. This is there 24/7. Whether you think about it or you don't. Whether you make mistakes or you don't. Whether you act out on it or you don't. Right? 24/7. Atzmizdik thing. As I said with the left leg, you don't need to think about it for it to be. Someone will say to you, you love your child? How come are you thinking about it? No, I don't have to think about it. It's so deep, it doesn't need manifestation. Not that it shouldn't have, but you see what I'm saying, okay? So I'm just using an example. Of course, we have to qualify, we're humans, and there was a moment we weren't born, and before my child was born, I didn't have this innate feel. Let's take that away. Let's make believe we're infinite, and your love for your child is infinite. But you wouldn't compare that to, let's say, I'm going to go buy now clothing for my child, or let's have a meal together, because that's already a means. That's I'm sorry to the etzem. So now that I desire to go, let's buy food, I want to feed my child, I'm not going to say that's my atzmizdik desire, and my atzmizdik essence of love to my child is feeding him. No, that's he needs to be fed in this world, so I feed him, I'll do whatever I need to do. Alachs kam v'kam, for sure things like taking a walk in the street, or going to work. So in other words, I just want to compare, there's a whole bunch of things that we're involved in, that you would not in any way equate or compare to atzmizdik desire for your child. You follow me? So if someone asked you now, when did this desire arise? You'll say, it never arose. As long as I exist, that I use desire. I don't mean the word desire. To be honest, I don't want to use desire because it's all words. Let's not use the word. As long as my etzem is there, the love to my child is there. Period. That will never change, and so on and so forth. That's the best I'm trying to explain how Atzmus relates to Yisrael, Kutchabrichu, Araisa, Mitzvahs, Dir B'Tachteinim as well.
You said the same day that Hashem is Yisrael.
Yeah, that's what it means. Now, if you really dissect it, you'll say, 1 second, are you your child? Is your child you? No, my child is not me, he's my child. But the connection is all the way through my etzem. As long as there's an etzem, there's that love. Again, love, I don't mean here chesed, and I don't mean there's a level. I mean whatever it is. Find a word. When we say desire, we're already talking about some type of manifestation. So now, yes, this innate love that I have to my child manifests in a desire to connect with him. Now you're talking in So I'm just, again, this is all words, trying to just find ways to...
Genetics
see, but there you can't say...
Relationship means that you don't have to think about it. It's just an essential...
Obviously, but you have to now make the qualification that God doesn't have genetic relationships. That's the distinction. It's fine if it helps you. Yeah, I need to make that qualification because at the end of the day, these are examples. Because you could say, you know what? I need food. I need love. I need my child. I need to love my child. It's part of me. God doesn't have needs. So why does he have this love for Torah and for the connection to Torah and so on? There you're not going to find an answer. That you want. Like it says sometimes in Chassidus, we know what he wants, but we don't know why he wants it. It doesn't mean we don't know why because we haven't been told, and one day you're going to find it. There is no why. The word why has not been created yet. Now, again, this is all us trying to understand these deepest levels. So it's going to have limitations. Whatever I said, you're going to have questions on, I'm sure. Because the whole point is we're not Atzmus, so it's hard to understand. But I'm trying to point out that everything can come from him, but there's different relationships between things. Now, interestingly, is not even as deep as Dir B'Tachteinim. Because is not a desire for... It's not like I love my or something. Is just God, so to speak, manifesting in some type of field of energy that will be the place wherever Atzmus is going to want to achieve, is going to achieve there. Now, it requires good thinking about it, because in a way, using the examples of earlier, God is like the sun, the ball of the sun itself. Everything else, no one relates to the ball of the sun. Relate now only to the air, the emanating. The heat we get, the warmth we get is from the air. But can you say the air is something that's not the sun? God forbid. Rotzen would be a problem. If the sun sent us a rotzen, not an air, someone's saying, 1 second, am I having a relationship with an entity or with the sun? Air allows you to have the relationships to the source, But in a way, it's interacting not through the source. It's interacting through this amorphous agent, whatever you want to call it. I mean, this is a Maskilim Chassidus for years, for generations, have been trying to understand Eir in this way. But look, the more refined you think, the more you think less about Yesh, the more you can relate to this. I mean, I gave the example of the quill because it helps us understand. First of all, I think the challenges we have is, first we have to get away from what we call localized thinking, particles. So we get to a field of energy thinking. Once you get to a field of energy thinking, you have to just abstract it further, till you get to a point of complete, what is this root of this field of energy? Not even an energy yet. It's just this, that's how I would, you see what I'm saying? So the word Nesava, in this context, is not meant to be a word like Rotzen or Taiva even. It's just a word because we have no other way to say it. The Arizal many times in Yitzchaim will say, I'm saying because I have no other way to say it. Rotzen there is a way to say it. Rotzen actually means Rotzen. Ola Ritzene. Ritzene means now he wants a structure called existence. Why he wants it is because of the Nesava, Torah, whatever it may be. Again, the word why is also not such a great term there because of logic. But let's put it this way: Rotzen is already a manifestation. I think one more point I'll make, and I think it'll be helpful. And I'm happy to elaborate on all this because I think anyone learning this is critical stuff. Here's the key thing. I just realized it. All of this can be understood. You see, the key to all of it is the thing that's like the big elephant in the room is that for whatever the reason is, God wants structure. That's the problem here. If God didn't want structure, let's just for argument's say we could enter into Atzmus, then there would be no issues. There'd be no Rotzen, there'd be no Chochmah, there'd be no Tzimtzum, there'd be no Kav. All we have is godliness, whatever that means. This is all predicated on structure. So let's work the other way around. The reason we need a Rotzen, that's not Eir, is because if you stick to Eir, you have a field of energy. You're never going to have a Tachtainim, that we know. So it goes like this. First, there's a field of energy that's just an expression of godliness. Period, whatever that is. Again, first I just mean it in conceptual levels. Then there's a desire for a building, for a home. This desire is a very Rotzen Kloli. 10 hidden spheres, Chachma, Bina, Das, etc. Then there's a Rotzen Kloli, then comes a Tzimtzum that conceals this whole field of energy, and now particles can emerge. But they don't just emerge, they emerge first a Kav, which has particles, but it emerges as a Rotzen Kloli, but now after the Tzimtzum. This is called Ak. So now, you have another eagle. It's also an eagle, it's also an equalizer, but now it's a Rotzen that's a blueprint. Now we have a blueprint. Whereas before it was it was all concealed and amorphous, whatever. Then comes within this Rotzen, is I want the whole existence, I want Atzilas Bri Yitzira Asiyah. So then you have Ritzenas that evolve. Okay, now we want a living room, a dining room. Each one has its own department head, Kesa. And then comes the immanent energy, what goes on inside the actual rooms, Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, etc. This is so all of this, if you really think about it, is because we need structure. Rotzen is the beginning of structure. That's the way you can say is what the Kabbalists are arguing about. Is Rotzen the beginning of structure, or is Rotzen an agent of the divine? So until the Arizal, until the Alter Rebbe, you would say Rotzen is as high as they can get. They got to God's desire, and the Alter Rebbe brought it to another level. No, there's a level before that, which just really is like the missing link.
Well, you said there's something even higher, which is even the highest missile level. It's Nisaba. Didn't you quote you?
So what?
You stopped that in you started
You skipped it now.
Yeah, because he's not talking about it here. Because he's not talking about it here. That's why.
You're talking about.
I'm only talking about it because I want to explain to people who learned other things. But if you would talk here, he's not talking about that even.
Well,
he's talking about He starts here with No. He doesn't talk about the level before here.
Earlier, did you say that?
Here he's talking about that doesn't begin with Rotzen, it begins with Okay. That's all. The truth, everything I explained now was only to explain if you learn other things. You don't need to understand this chapter for what I just said. What I said now is simply the additional element that prior to Rotzen there's another state.
Which is
Or, exactly. And that's it. That's all he comes to say here.
Didn't you say earlier that Nisaba according to
So what? First of all, I explained what I meant by Nisaba. I just explained for half an hour what I meant. No. But my point is, one second. But I just explained for a half an hour what I meant by Nesava. You didn't get anything I said about Nesava?
Nesava is a half hour. Explain.
I just explained what Torah. Well, no, but I explained. I gave a whole example with a child and a father.
Yeah,
that's not Ur, and I said it's higher than Ur. So
no.
So what do you?
When you started,
my explanation, you got or you didn't get? I just want to know. I feel I explained it for 20 minutes. I have a question, but my explanation about Nesava that before Ur and all that was understood or not understood. I gave examples. I just want to know if it got through or not. If it didn't, I'll move on anyway. I just want to know. Huh? So okay, fine.
But that's besides being moved in. That's still quote in Oxford.
I'm asking, did you get what I said or I didn't get? That's all the question. So yes or no?
Yes, I got that. Yes, that you say Nesava. You don't ask a kasha on it. It's rooted in Osmos. Before or. Which is an Hiddush to me today. I learned something very important.
And the reason why discuss this now in this chapter when we're discussing only the level of Ur now.
No, because Rabbi Jacobson started then trying to draw the whole picture.
So that and I finished and so I finished discussing.
He started with or. I was saying, so Hiddush to me today was that there's something even higher than this or.
We'll get to that.
Bavram, so given helpful what I said about Torah, that. That's okay.
Where I started from
I've never heard this before. Torah was so deep.
That's why the written Torah starts with the base, because it's not the initial thing.
It says Raisa Kutchabrichu.
Another reason why it starts with the base is
Really not the initial thing. Another chapter will be another level.
No, but look, anyone learning Chassidus, it's an obvious question you want to understand, and I think it's also relevant to the end of the chapter. I'm not just saying it because they asked. I'm also talking to myself here. Just remember, I'm not. If something that's really a complete thing, I know what to move on. This is relevant, I think, and those that get it, fine. Anyway, the bottom line is that we're talking here a state. Let's put it this way. Up to this point, we talked about. Can you show me? Give me a sum over a second, right here. You see right? No, for the next one. Next one. For the next one here.
You got it. Just left. Yeah.
Now this is fundamental today for me.
No. I listen. There are things that are complete tangents which we don't have to go into. There are things that are relevant to the whole picture. That may not be the chapter. To me, this is relevant, but I've said what I want to say. And I think I have to say it again. It's on the record, and hopefully it could be. You got to hear it. Listen, I didn't just come up with a thought here just now. I've been thinking about this for quite a while. I think to own these ideas takes thought. All I can do is say what I have to say. It's on the record, and we go further. I'm sure it'll come up. I told you it's not going to be. You're not learning Gemara here. Meaning you're not going to come up a question. My head doesn't get it. Let me work a half hour. I'll get it. The more you get this, the more you're not going to get it, and then you're going to go deeper. That's just be at peace with that. And then you come to, because you're not trying to fit God into your parameters. You're trying to fit yourself into God's parameters. So you think that's an easy thing to do? But he says it's not. Rusa deliba. Okay, it's not impossible. Even with the mind, remember the same God created the mind. The beauty here is that Chabad is a way is in there in this whole picture as well. I just wanted to see one thing before I continue.
So that's what we said about.
No. But Ratzon is an entity, and Ur is a field of energy. That's the key difference.
No, but he's not talking about it right now.
Nasav is not a Ratzon. I just explained at length. The love for your child is not a Ratzon.
He said it permeates every.
That's exactly correct. He's actually. Ratzon does not. But Ratzon is an entity, and Ur also permeates everything. Ur permeates everything. The field of energy permeates everything, but it's not the Ratzon. It's still a step before the Ratzon.
Right.
Even in Ratzon, he said that we already have 3 levels: Muchlat, Nelam, and Goli. If you really break it down.
And in every single level there you have the Nisava. So Nisava is
like... But that's like Torah. That's like I said, that...
I think that's what Nisava is. It permeates every single level.
That's not... I wouldn't define it by that. Because we say, as soon as you say that, he's right. Ratzon also does... There's nothing anything outside of the Ratzon. Ratzon also permeates every level. That's not how I would define it. I said... Listen. Not that I'm happy to have your help, but I said what I said. But you're saying... No. What I said I would not use that. That would be not my way of describing the Sava, that it permeates everything, because then Ratzon, so does everything.
Ratzon doesn't go higher than Ratzon.
Sava
goes higher than Ratzon.
So that's a different word. That's not about permeating everything. That's exactly.
Higher, and it goes all the way to the lowest level.
And Ratzon does not go to the lowest level?
It also does, but it doesn't go as high. It doesn't start as high as the Sava.
Okay.
It's like saying osmosis. It permeates every level too. It's not actually not.
Okay, the two machlekes that he says is one is whether Kesser is you count Kesser as one of the 10 spheres. Okay. And some say not, some say yes. The Ramak says yes, that you do count it. And then there's a second argument whether Kesser is called Ein Sof or not. I just wanted to point that out. No, the Rizal, no, that's again two different Kabbalists. The Rizal's reconciliation, there's two levels in Kesser. The higher level of Kesser is not in the spheres and it's called Ein Sof. The lower level of Kesser is in the spheres and not called Ein Sof. But that's still not sufficient because it's still Kesser. You need a higher level called Eir. The Alter Rebbe goes beyond the Rizal, if you want to put it that way. So there's the Kabbalim is one level, the Rizal goes further, the Alter Rebbe takes it further. Now when you say further, he's not disagreeing with Rizal. He's explaining something that is missing in the picture, because Ratzon and Kesser, even the highest level, still is an entity. That's the thing.
So the highest level of Kesser, according to the both agree, I think it starts with Neas. That's right. Because it only goes to iron.
The words he uses is the following, just to give you clarity, because this complements what we're learning in this chapter now, because we're talking about Eir and Ratzon. So he says like this. The Rizal is Machriya, that's what he says. That's Mutza. The Kesser is an interface. It has but from the lower level of the Maitzil. From that level it's Ein Sof. And it also is Arich, the lower level is the root of the emanations. Fine. And that from that perspective it's one of the 10 spheres.
What page is this in
Samach Vav Vayelech, 166. This is really a mimer from here as I compared to the mimer of the Tzemach Tzedek. I made a whole comparative study. It's a Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Rashab's editions. It's one of the probably one of the most fundamental Mamorim of this. Now, some Ayin Beis refers to it, and there's a lot of ideas are straight that you need to learn them together to really understand well. So he says like this. So here is what the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Rashab. But even the Arizal needs explanation. How could you say that Kesser has literally Ein Sof Mamish? Because Kesser is not Ein Sof, it's Kesser, it's not Ratzon, it's not Chachma, not Bina, it's a state, it's a level. And only Atzmus you could really call Ein Sof. That's his first question. Okay. Another question. How could you say there's the lowest of the Ein Sof? How could you say in Atzma such a level? Then he goes on to say the similar argument is about whether Kesser. But the meaning of Ein Sof. He says Ramak holds Ein Sof as Atzmus Habeira. The Rameh that we're referring to, it's Ratzon. And he too goes now, explains that this is the problem with both of the arguments. And then he says, comes the Alter Rebbe as Mechadish Eir. And Eir is this state that you could call Ein Sof because it has nothing of its own. At the same time, it's not Atzmos Mamish. It's an entity beyond, a step below. That's the Kudah here, which here is more brief, but it's based the same idea. So now, let's go back now. Now he teaches Baruch Sh'amar. And this is the meaning, Baruch Sh'amar v'hayayelam. Amira is the Ratzon. Baruch Sh'amar, he just replaces that word, the word Ratzon. Amira b'lev is Mechshava Ratzon. So you're saying, what's the Amira? That there should be an entity that's separate from Atzmus. That's Baruch Shemer V'Haya Elam. Okay. And the word V'Haya, he gives two interpretations. One, the first interpretation is V'Haya comes from the what's the deeper purpose of Elam? Is to the birurim of transformation of the world, and V'Haya is from the word Simcha. So it's the Simcha that God sees in the purpose of this whole Elam. And that's what it means. But Minimlach, who did he consult? The souls of tzaddikim. Not that he consulted he envisioned the pleasure that comes from their work in transforming this world. Okay. Second interpretation, after the parentheses, that V'Haya means that immediately, within this immediately arose a desire which then engraved the 10 hidden spheres. Nevertheless, he says Amir is higher from the level of the 10 spheres. Okay. Then the last piece of the chapter, which I said I would elaborate upon, is what is this Rishus? Remember, Bereishu Menisa de Malka, which is Baruch Shamar V'Hoya Elam, Baruch Shamar, means in the beginning of the Rishus and Ratzon. So he explains that here desire is not compelled. Now, without even reading anything, the bottom line is Atzmus is not compelled to do anything. So this desire that arose was not something that he needed it, or in some way something compels from within that must happen. So he says this comes, it's not nechrachi. He says in the words of Masha'olah b'tzein sheyi inyan nivdol matzmusim etzad ha'yechelus sheba'atzmus. Comes from the yechelus of atzmus. Now, what we discussed yesterday, and I stand by that, I think that is the real meaning here. Yechelus here means it's all the omnipotent and all-powerful ability to do anything. That's where it comes from. So it's not because there's a need, that he's lacking something, or because of some other aspect. It just comes from that Yechelus, that level of Yechelus. What I was a little confused was because the word Yechelus is another Chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. That Tzemach Tzedek brings it in Sheresh Mitzvah Atfil and other places. He says that we heard from the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, from the Rebbe, Rabbeinu Gadol, or Rabbeinu Nishma, the word Yechelus. Yechelus was a word the Alter Rebbe used to explain how everything is contained within Atzmos. So, when we say something is contained within something, the problem here is we can't say it's contained. So he used the word Yechelus. Yechelus means his ability. He has the ability to do it. So in other words, you'd say Atzmos has the ability to do anything. He has the ability to create 10 spheres. He has the ability to create million spheres. The ability to create no spheres. How would you define it in this Atzmos state? You'd call it Yechelus. That's essentially what the Tzemach Tzedek says the Alter Rebbe was Machadish. So in a way, Yechelus is even higher than Oyer. Yes, because that's what he says also in Samach Vov, in the Maimer Kimcha, and then Odom Kiyakiv. Because Yecholte L'Hoyer. If you compare Atzmos to Oyer, you'd say Atzmos has the capability to. But then it says that not the primary role of Atzmos is to give off Oyer. So though Oyer has nothing outside of Atzmos, and it has that advantage over Ratzon that I said, but on the other hand, you can't say Oyer is Atzmos. You can't call Oyer. Oyer is just one. There's many, many more things in Atzmos that are not in Oyer, basically. So it's a field of energy, true. We've achieved that. It's not any defined entity. Everything happens in that field. But Atzmos is the Yechelus, is a state of Yechelus. So just another way of helping understand something that is this understanding. Now, obviously, Atzmos is not Yechelus, but Atzmos has the Yechelus for everything. It's a distinction between, for example, saying that a seed has everything that's going to become a tree. But a seed and a tree are really in the same world. It's just a matter of size. Or let's say it's even quality, not just quantity. You have something that's contained in a source. Okay? Even ideas you haven't even conceived of. They're not yesh ma'ayin mamish. They're not from nothing. Somewhere in you have a brain. Your brain has the power to conceive. My point is that everything you can define, that when it comes out, it originated somewhere. It wasn't a true quantum leap from nothingness to existence. something. Even a child that's born, well, though we don't know the mystery, it's a seed, fertilizes an egg, and a child is born. The genetic matter of the child comes from the DNA of the parents that's in that seed. The fact that it's so minuscule and so on, so what? My point is, we don't understand yesh ma'ayin, we have only yesh miyesh. Very sophisticated yesh miyesh. Today we almost can think it's yesh ma'ayin, but it's not. Is a cell phone yesh ma'ayin? Is the technology yesh ma'ayin? No. The energies that existed, that we were able to tap into, were there from the beginning of time. Nobody knew it was there, that's all. There are more energies out there that we haven't yet accessed. You follow this? So when you say source and product, is this how God is with us? The answer is no. That's why the Alter Rebbe gives you the word Yechelis. So how is it in God? 1 second. The whole world came out of Him. Why is it not like a seed? He's the seed and we're the tree. Or you want to go differently? You could say He's the composer, we're the music. Now, for many reasons we can't say that, because then all you're doing is really moving the question. So everyone's going to say, so who created God? Like, who created the composer? God is a completely different type of entity. Like we'll say in a few minutes, his whole existence is not result of a cause. But if He's our cause, then He's in some way commensurate to us. However you twist and turn, like you asked the question in a way, is there some type of change? So the Alter Rebbe uses the word Yechelis to explain, actually now I realize that it is very relevant, to explain how are we in Him and He's not related to us. So he says the word Yechelis. It's like He carries everything. He contains everything. Not like a composer or an author contains 1,000,000 books or 1,000,000,000 books or infinite books. He's beyond it all. So he calls it Yechelis. He calls it His ability to do so. Yechelis is His potential. But it's not like a potential, like, there's oil inside of an olive, and it's in a potential state, then you press the olive, and now you got oil. Or you take the oil, now you light a flame with it. All these, one way or another, is one state as maybe there's an Ayin Beis, that there's a yesh and yesh, but fine. One thing is brought to another. We cannot say on God that He's the Siba and we're the Mesubav. He's the Ilah, we're the Olol. That's a key thing in Chassidus. This is very much part of the dilemma, because the Ramak, ultimately, just to go back to that, ultimately, the Ramak, it says he did not know of the Tzimtzum. So his only way to understand our relationship with God was Ilah v'Olol. Yes, a very distant Ilah v'Olol. Cause and effect. Very distant. But it ended up being that he had always a problem. You can't really... Either we have to be compromised or Atzmos is compromised. Because if it's Ilah v'Olol, either we have to then eliminate our entity to be able to connect to that source, or that source is some way is still commensurate to us.
Cause and effect, you can still say things simply, though. It doesn't include it.
No, but without the tzimtzum, you don't have the real quantum leap of two different realities. Because it's all diminishing. It's like, okay, a lot of diminishing going on. I don't go right there. That's a really different topic.
Or before the tzimtzum, we see a drastic...
The tzimtzum resolves very fundamental problems in this regard. It resolves the biggest issue of the Ein Arech, that there's an actual infinite distance between us and God. And without a tzimtzum, you're hard pressed to figure out how you can explain that. What are you saying to me? I'm telling you what the tzimtzum adds. Without the tzimtzum, you can't say no. A tzimtzum makes a major difference. A tzimtzum is a total shift of consciousness. It's a shift of consciousness where we think we're reality and God is the novelty. That you can't explain with the Ilah v'Olol, no matter how you twist it. It's like saying, as much as Ruchnius, as much as you diminish Ruchnius, can it create a yesh? No. Ruchnius doesn't have the power to create a yesh.
The same words describe Or and so.
What do you ask me? I don't understand what you're asking me. I just said to you, energy can go on and on. You can diminish energy completely, and you won't have a yesh. That you understand?
Yes, but
you need something else. So
tremendous tzimtzum or change between Or Ein Sof and Atzmos.
no, Or Ein Sof is nothing but Atzmos. Or Ein Sof, if you touch Or Ein Sof, you're touching Atzmos, basically. It's complete. We could not exist in the world of Or Ein Sof. So you see that right there, and we could exist after Tzimtzum. So Or Ein Sof's jump from Atzmos does not allow us to exist. It allows things to start becoming emerging, but it doesn't allow us. Anyway, let me go back for a moment. So how do you explain? So Yechelis is adds the element. It's just a way of understanding something has ability to do something, but you can't call that ability a state of being inside that essence. It's Yechelis. He has the ability to illuminate, not to illuminate. So there's no error in there. It's Yecholte Lahayr, Yechelis. Yechelis to do it. It's just two states. There's the existence, there's the desire for existence, and there's the Yechelis for the whole thing. So that's what he says now. He adds this thing. So all this, meaning it's coming from the Yechelis. If coming from the Yechelis, God can do anything in that sense. And therefore, that which the Rosen's desire to have something outside of him, separate of him. And then he goes on, and I think that's why he brings Ageres HaKedesh. Because Isavas HaYesh is an example of what I just said, the distance. To create something like a Yesh can only come from a force that has no, a Yesh that has no cause, can only come from a force that has no cause, which is Atzmos. And that's why you can't call it a cause. He says, it's in effect, yes, the Yechelis is a cause, but you can't call it a cause. Because a cause would mean that it has a relationship with effect. So he just calls it that it's the root of it all, basically. It's a root that's not like a cause. It's a root that it doesn't come from anywhere else, but you can't even say it's coming from within that either. Because then somewhere within you're going to have to find a similarity. And since Ma'akash Yechelis is Sibas HaRotzen, being that this Yechelis is the cause for this Rotzen, that's why it's not a must. Because it's only a state of Yechelis. That's the meaning of Yechelis. If you say a seed and a tree, in some way, even though you can abort the process, you can't say that the seed has the ability to create a tree. It's no world, but the seed is now in the process of creating a tree, just a matter of time. When you say anything is yesh mi yesh, it means it's there, but it hasn't yet come to this stage. Like I said, of course you can stop the process, but the process has begun. You can't say Atzmos is the beginning of the process of existence for this reason, because then you're saying existence is within him, it's just in a very subtle state. So all we say, it's in Yechelis, it's his ability to do so. That ability, but I think the depth here, this is I've not seen it elsewhere. This Yechelis is connected to him ability to create Yesh Ma'ayin. In other words, this ability, the fact that he created something that has no cause and is a sign that he has no cause, is coming from a place no cause, is all a reflection of this Yechelis that has no, in other words, the Yesh, you can't say Atzmus is the cause for the Yesh. Because the Yesh ain't le'ilah v'sibah, like Atzmus ain't le'ilah v'sibah. So therefore, what you achieve here is that everything that comes from him is completely by his will, and not in any way a necessity. So let me put it this way. I don't know if this is what he means, but I think so. When we say we desire something, before you desire it, you already have the desire. Let me explain what I mean. Not that you have the desire, but you have all the ingredients that are going to bring to this desire. Because you have needs. You just haven't come to the conclusion that you need have a house, or you need something else. God, Atzmus has no needs. And therefore he has no relationship with anything, and doesn't need a relationship with anything. So if there's going to be a desire, he needs to desire the desire. That's the key.
What was that last time?
If he desires something, he has to desire a desire, because nothing else is going to compel him to do so. That's the state of that's what Yechelis is. If he had, God forbid, if something has a cause, that cause is what compels you to desire. You can't just say, "Oh, I have this free will." I'm not talking about Bechira, because Bechira comes from Atzmos. That's another story. But as far as what he's saying here, means that, so therefore that's the Rishus. And like he concludes, but it's Tzeinei Hatev B'Dover Bli Hechrech. So the key word here is that when something is compelled, it means there's a relationship between the thing and the thing that is that you want. That's why you're compelled. And you cannot say that you are completely detached from it. Here you can say complete detachment, and then he desired to desire. But you can't use the first desire and call it desire. Oyer emerges, and within that is called a desire emerges. Now, how Atzmus relates with Oyer, as I said, Oyer is simply a reflection. Yechelte l'hoyer. That's it. Not the Rotzen l'hoyer, the Yechelis l'hoyer. Now remember, Yechelis by God is just like by us Rotzen, and just like by us it activates things. So the bottom line is, you can't call it a desire for air, you can call it a yechelis for air, and God's yechelis then manifests. And within that air is a desire for existence. That's the picture.
That's why it's a tremendous symptom.
This is heavy stuff.
What was that?
I think that's the key here. That's what he means by yechelis. Aha.
What was it?
He's b'derech hagav. He's not derech. He doesn't saying. I see. This is what I was. I knew there's something here that's much. But he's basically saying that yechelis is the level. Is how air comes from. Not just air. How everything comes is yechelis.
Not to have yechelis.
So like that on a lower level, ein kayach hasapel. God's yechelis is, for all practical purposes, actual. But you cannot relate it like in other words, you could have like this. You could have ilah v'olol. Here, I think I got it. Ilah v'olol, cause and effect. Cause and effect is basically the classics example of teacher and student, shefa. So there's a root, and the cause has to manifest, has to invest in the effect. I take my hand, I put it on a stone, I throw it. Fine. It's invested, there's a change in me. There's a little more distant cause and effect, it's called siba mesubov. So it's not like my hand is holding the stone, it would be more like I press a button, and it has a more detached impact, but it's still an impact. Still siba mesubov. There's a relationship. Then there's the relationship of ratzon, the desire that we have to do things. So that's not my hand taking the stone. That's already a faculty at work. It's my desire. It's my soul saying, I want to take the stone and throw it. So ratzon is more distant from the stone than my hand is, and ratzon doesn't have to invest and doesn't get tired, so to speak. It's not like a teacher and a student, but it's still a ratzon is still a root for, there is a relationship between the two. So to say that atzmus is ratzon, like the Rameh says, so all you did is yes, you made it. It's more distant than the faculty, but it's still a relationship. He moves it up to Ein Sof, and all the way to Yechelis. So the relationship is a whole different story now. It's not a desire for it. Even the word desire doesn't exist. It's an oir, and there's a yechelis that puts the whole thing into motion, so to speak. So all these are words. It's just giving us examples to try to understand the infinite distance between us and the divine. That's the key here. So the beauty of Chassidus at the end is, and this is the whole interface of Ayin Beis and Chassidus, we want to understand the depth of our distance from God, and that makes us closer to Him. That's the ultimate paradox. And it's not a contradiction. Because not to understand the difference is, number one, incorrect, is delusional. There is a distance. And that too can be integrated. So we're not talking now, we're going, we're removing, so to speak, Atzmus. We're removing. But at the end of the day, remember the same Atzmus created the Ratzon and created Mamala Kalaman, and he wants it all to join. So at the end of the day, the immanence will experience the transcendence. The Kav will hit the bottom of the Tzimtzum, as we've discussed. But you can only do that by first, it's like the Rebbe says about a beautiful thought about Havdalah. Havdalah means to separate. But the Rebbe says by separating Shabbos from the weekday, you unite them. Because you're recognizing the parameters. If the food pipe and the wind pipe would not recognize their parameters, they would kill each other. So recognizing the division is what actually unites them. It would be like respecting diversity is what creates the harmony. If I'm going to say I'm going to be one with you, if all the organs in the body said, let's all join together, organ convention, unity. The destruction. You be the brain, you be the heart, you be the liver, you be the bladder, whatever it is. That's not individual, but the individuals complement each other. So the fact is, in other words, so by creating this Havdalah, in other words, Yirah, awe of God, is the key to have Ava. And the other way around as well. Ava is the intimate and the closeness of it. That's the Mamala Kalaman. And Yirah is the awe and beyond. Go ahead. How many epiphanies are you having today? I see Yirah.
Where's Yecholos related to Nisava?
Nishava or Nisava? I know. Nisava would be, with a hay would be easier. I would say that Nisava exists on all levels. The Rebbe has an interesting chiddush as well. Footnote, he says, Nisava is the ultimate cause, yet Kabbalah brings other reasons for existence. For example, you have the reason to reveal actualize all his potential. You have begin the shtamudin in order for us to know him. There's different reasons. Sometimes teva tev that he's good and he wants to give goodness. There's 4 or 5 different reasons given. So the Rebbe has a very interesting way of taking. He says, in Samach Vav, in the beginning, he asks the question, and then he answers. He says those reasons are correct reasons in Atzilus or higher, but the ultimate reason is Nesava. And the Rebbe continues and the Rebbe explains this in footnotes. I could show you if you want to know where. I mean, one place is in the Sikh of Chelik Chof L'Kutei Sichos, volume 20. Look at the Sikh in Noyach, Tov Shin Lamed Ches, right after the Rebbe's heart attack. There's very big footnotes about this. It's in the back of the volume. This office, Noyach Tov Shin Lamed Ches. It's like 2 weeks after the Rebbe's heart attack. Those are very deep sikhs then. The Rebbe was pouring it on, just for the record. Anyway, so the Rebbe's vart is like this, and this is, you'll see in a second what his vart is, because Nesavad Tachtenim, therefore, that became the cause for the other reasons to be in each of the worlds. So Atzilus, it thinks a certain way, so Atzilus now justifies or gives an explanation for existence from its perspective. So Nesava is like what sets everything in motion. Part of Nesava is that he wants Seichel in it. Nesava is not Seichel. Nesava is a Taiva. And part of the Seichel. So there are reasons that are Seichel reasons, but those reasons only exist in the world of Seichel. So to say, for example, that God revealed his potential. In Atzmos, that is not, what does he need that for? He doesn't need to reveal his potential. But once he Nesava for Dir B'Tachtenim, in the world of Seichel, that makes sense. Atzilus says, the purpose is to reveal the potential we have. That's essentially the Rebbe's vart. What am I saying here? So in other words, you have basically Nesava on all levels. Okay? I don't know if that's what you meant before, but what do I mean? So if you talk about Nesava as it manifests, let's say, in the world after the Tzimtzum, so Nesava will manifest in reasonable explanations. If you talk about Nesava in Ur, it'll be on an Ur level. If you talk about Nesava in Atzmus, all the way back, that's in the Yechelis level. That's how I would put it.
So your bottom line, who's preceding who? Yecholis or Nesava?
Atzmus precedes everything.
That. Okay.
Atzmus has Yechelis, and Yechelis includes Nesava. However, I would just say the following. When it comes to Torah, mitzvahs, Yisrael, and the Nesava B'Tachtenim, they are rooted there. They actually are associated with it.
Yes. But Yecholis is ultimately...
No, but for example... Yecholis is not a level. Yecholis is God's ability. That's all it means, ability. Let's define the word ability. Ability, it's God's ability. No, I would say Nesava is actually higher, if you really ask me. No, because Atzmus and Torah are one. But there's no state, there's no...
Yecholis, I have a nosebleed from Yecholis. It's so high.
No. Only a nosebleed. There are some people whose whole souls expired because of it. Hey, relax. There's some people's entire souls expired. You don't have a nosebleed.
Nesava should decide not to have Yecholis.
Exactly.
No. You're using the wrong language. You can't use such language. Nesava, you see, your problem that you're having is you don't really understand Nesava. You're trying to understand Nesava as a level, and it's not a level. I'm trying to explain to you. It's not a will, it's not a desire. It's the love of the Father within the Father. That's all it is. You can't even call it love. It's
that precede Yecholos.
I don't like the word precede. It associates with
Atzmus. More than Atzmus did.
Yecholis is God's ability to do anything.
Right.
Nesava is God's desire for Tachtenim. Is Torah easier for you to understand? Torah. Is there a place where there's no Torah? That would be dangerous, right? So, right. So in other words, the point I'm trying to make is there's a place. Look. You're right. What you're trying to do is you're doing exactly opposite of what I said you must do. You'll never get it the way you're trying. You're trying to fit it into your way of understanding space and items. You were trying to figure out in Atzmus a bunch of items. There's no items in Atzmus. You can cut that out. There's no items in Atzmus.
The whole idea was bringing the ladder to try to bring us to the highest level.
But we're not going to get to
the first step. On the ladder, the highest step.
The first step is like...
Can't even do the next chapter. We'll have to stop here. One second, but I will say the following. Let me just say the following. I hear you loud and clear, but you're going to need some silence. and absorbing.
Yes.
Not because, of course, we want to get there, but to get there are many ways to get there. I think the key thing you don't want to do is like this. You don't want to get trapped into trying to find in Atzmus in a little more subtle way a treasure chest full of stuff. Hold on. It's not a treasure chest. It's a reality that's I told you, we can't even figure out the realities of Ruchnius, let alone before the Tzimtzum. We're talking here now. My point is the following. My point is, when you talk in the Sava, I hear the language, you're not talking about Atzmus. Your Nesava that you talk about, I would say, is maybe Nesava of maybe Siyar Ruchnius. We're not even talking about Atzilus. You're talking Nesava as you relate to it. You're not talking about Atzmus Dik Nesava. I just want to tell you that, so just be aware of that. So you call it Atzmus, because related to it, it's the cause of why we're here. But you're talking in a way that's not Atzmus Dik language, that's the point. You're not even talking Lifnei Tzimtzum language. So there's language. No, I'm trying to say here, this is why I go back. If we're the bottom of the ladder, Yesh Hagashmi Al Chumri in this world, and then we climb. There's Asir Ruchnis, there's Yitzira Bria Atzilus, there's Nekudin Toyu, Akudin Ak, Kav, Malchus the Ein Sof, the Tzimtzum, Malchus of Ein Sof, all the 10 hidden spheres. Yeah, Rotzen, before the Rotzen, before the Rotzen, Ein Sof, Atzmus. Okay.
Yes.
So my question is, listen. These are not just what I just counted 10 levels. Oh, you know what? I did level 1 of the game. Let's go to the next level. No. To earn your way to the next level, you have to have a different way of thinking completely. It's like Rabbi Zera had to forget the whole Talmud Bavli to get Talmud Yerushalmi. You understand what I just said now? Okay. Question is, where are you? Where am I? Right. So that's the thing here. That's why I'm not trying to not answer your question or anything. I'm trying to tell you, you gotta, to get there, you have to, it's like you can't go into the next room with my answer. You need to have a different way of thinking, and then you'll be able to enter. You understand my point that I just made? So we talk about Atzmus and Nesava, and we're throwing ideas. I'm talking about how do you actually travel through these levels and figure out where you are, where am I not, how am I relating to things. I tell you that I think that we all, even when we're taking this trip right now, we will all be thrust right back to earth as soon as we leave here, and we're back to Elam Haza, and that we relate to very well. So let's challenge ourselves a question. Who's the real you? What's your level of perception? What we're learning here, or what you're going to be doing the rest of your day today?
It depends. If I were to go
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking to myself as well.
And say, you know what? I'm not going to go to work today because I'm going to.
Oh, there you go. Now then you're talking. That's why Chassidim couldn't tear themselves away from davening, because they went there and that's where they wanted to go. They were not come. They were. Now you understand why the Meraglim were more sophisticated than anything. They could not go there. They couldn't go to work. And that's it.
I just had an understanding of the Meraglim.
That's why you could appreciate them. Yeah.
I had an emotional reaction.
Exactly. They could not go there. They didn't.
Away from the sheer,
That's the extent that not everyone runs. Everyone looks at when's the clock and how do I get out of shul. There's some people never want to leave shul, not because there's gossip going on, because the best gossip. I'm not mean that reason. Right. No, my point is, so this is what I'm saying. This in Nigla or in other schools of thought. The goal is to break the resistance and get, let me study. I'll study tonight. Take whatever. You went to Yale, whatever it is. Study, I'll break more, I'll read more. Here the goal is to refine yourself to another level, to earn my ability to understand the next level. And that's really our challenge. Our challenge, to me, if we had an assignment, I would say is, explain to me the difference in Echus, not Kamos, between Siya, Sira, Bria, Atzilus. Then we'll start getting quality. Not just, it's a higher world. Well, it's an easy word to say, higher world. It's not higher world, it's the second floor, the third floor. Right, exactly. So, for example, I gave you an example that Rebbe Rashab uses. You see an apple. Okay? An apple is a physical apple. You touch it, has a color, has a shape, has a taste, everything. Geshmis as it gets. Now, study the apple. Don't touch it. Close your eyes. Imagine the apple. What are you seeing? You can describe every texture to someone that has never seen the apple. You can even paint it if you know how to draw. So this is an example of Ruchnis over Gashmis. This would be Asir Ruchnis. Do we live on that level? No. To me, to us, that's imagination. Yeah, we can envision. But imagine a person lives on that level, and the physical apple comes next. From that level, he comes to the physical apple, not the other way around. That's just Asir Ruchnis. Then go to Yitzir Ruchnis and say, okay, so what is the apple on Yitzir Ruchnis level? You have to have an equal jump. What's the image of the image?
No, within Asir Ruchnis, there's Asir.
Yeah. I'm not. So my point is the climbing of this ladder to go from matter to spirit, or matter to energy, and then to a higher, subtler energy. To higher. How many levels? I'm going to use a very real. I never used this example before. Maybe I have. I deal with people all the time, right? People come. Someone comes sitting here. I have a problem. I can't get along with my wife. Okay, or some other thing. So of course, sensitively, I start probing. What am I probing for? Not just. I want to know what kind of person this is. Is he open-minded? Is he, is he even able to hear something different? Is he convinced that she's the problem? I'm just, and you go through the usual suspects. What kind of marriage did your parents have? What's your context for love and marriage? What are we doing? Look what I described the other day, like going to the unconscious. You're trying to touch the conscious to see what's the forces causing it. And then I say something and suddenly he says, no, it's definitely not that. And I know I found the problem. Not the problem, I don't know the solution, we're not even getting to the solution. But what are you doing really? How deep are you going into his so-called the imaginary apple, so to speak? Trying to find out not what he says or what he's doing physically, but what's the cause for it. Now there's a cause to a cause, and to a cause to a cause to a cause. Then I may identify. He says to me, last year something happened. I'm just throwing a hypothetical. Something happened. I did something which was wrong, and it hurt my wife, and she's not forgiving me. Okay, we found something. But then, is that the cause? Not necessarily. What caused that? Why'd that happen? And then you can dig and dig and dig. You're going to Sibba after Sibba. You're going Ilavol, basically. You're trying to find as far back as one can go. What would be the root of this issue? Now, I'm not being simplistic. I don't mean there's one root. It could be a million, and it could be one you never find. All I'm trying to point out is, there you can have gradations. You can actually turn this into an exercise and say, okay, almost like a manual. When someone tells you, like those guys, they say, answer yes, no. If you answer yes, you go this path, no, this way. Okay.
Decision tree.
Right. This is exactly. And what you're doing is trying to identify as close as possible the root of something. I'm only using it as an example because that's really like almost mapping the conscious on the conscious to try to get to the root of things. In many ways, Chassidus, when it talks about Seder Shtalshus, that's what it's trying to do. Retrace the steps. But it's not steps that are equal steps. It's not like, okay, there's a river, and I'm going to make now stones, and I'm going to climb, each stone is equal, it's just one step. Here, each step requires a more refined human being to move. You can't go there without a better song. And that song is Aveda, refinement, sensitivity. What's the story with the Tzemach Tzedek? He was going to daven, he was rushing. He was always to give tzedakah before he davened. He rushed, so he didn't sense the Alter Rebbe in his davening. So he said, "Ani b'tzedek echzeh panecha," that through tzedek I grasped his face, and he went outside to give the tzedakah. And he realized, why was that necessary? Because his sensitivity to another person opened him up to be able to be sensitive to something outside of himself. Relative to the Tzemach Tzedek. It's not a zgula. It's not just a magic trick. You press a tzedakah. Tzedakah makes you a sensitive person. You can't look at another person. You're going to look at God. You're talking about yourself. You're focused on yourself. You think you're going to be open to God. That's why God says, you don't love the people I love, then you don't love me. Because it's a very simple thing. It's across the board. It's like you can't hate one person and love everybody else. It doesn't work that way. My point is that it's all about shedding our perceptions, our doors of perception, to see what's beneath, beyond, within. And that within goes deeper, 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 deeper. To me, to really map this in that way is beyond revolutionary. Now, clearly the Rebbe felt that Ayin Beis, more than any other Chemshech, was dangerous. He said there was a chashash, a concern printing it, and he said the chashash came to be realized. He didn't say why. When he spoke in Tavshel Lamed Zayin, when he spoke about Yitzhak Kislev. My only way I can understand is not the words of Ayin Beis. And if this would really be expressed correctly to the world, it's very dangerous for the Sitz Achra, and that's why it would oppose it. There's no question. This in other words has the power to bring Mashiach in the real way, if you can, because maybe no hemshech like this mapped it out quite this way. Everything else was left unspoken. Other Maimorim, that's my understanding of what the Rebbe means. In other words, the stakes are high. And the Alter Rebbe, the same thing. The Gilu of Yutes Kislev, what bothered them above in heaven? So you're going to teach Chassidus. I mean, since when is that a crime? You could say a crime if someone's going to do something wrong. The Alter Rebbe is teaching Torah. What's wrong with that? And he had to ask the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, should I continue? And they said, more, even more. Because there's another world that we talked about it. There's the Bnei Elikim that oppose. When there's going to be a big Gilui, there's always going to be a big resistance. And that's what it comes down. The Rebbe had a heart attack the year after when Ayin Beis was published. Now, my only way of understanding, the Rebbe says these words. There was a chashash. I have it right here in the beginning. And the chashash is given as gehal. No one knows what he meant. We always thought Ayin Beis was not printed because, as the Rebbe writes in Chanech Lana in the introduction, Yitzotson, that should be the Eibishter should help. We should have the Emtsoim, the money, financial.
Nobody wrote it and asked it ever or any of what it meant.
No. I asked Rabbi Groner recently. He said, no. Those areas where the Rebbe spoke that way, no one ever. It's like maybe someone should have, but no. And I don't know if the Rebbe would have answered. But he's going to tell you what the chash was. He's doing it, but bottom line, he published it. So he's going to start telling you what the problem. I don't think he would. He said. I mean, I told you. I asked Rabbi Groner this when I started teaching. I asked. He said to me, till that point, everyone thought it was money. Just there was not enough money to do it. I guess that either the Rebbe heard something or knew something, or maybe because the mere fact that over all the years it didn't happen, the Rebbe realized it's not just money. Whatever the reason is. But I always wonder, I say, someone even told me, don't you feel it's dangerous to teach Ayin Beis? I have some people ask me this. I said, the way I teach it, it's not so dangerous. I'm not worried. If we were really going somewhere, that's not a good statement. I understand. Anyway, so let's stop here. So we did a review of chapter 69. I think it deserved it, so why not? It's heavy duty stuff. It's a review of 69.